Hello, Chris.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So, can you tell us all about yourself? How did you get? What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, this perhaps not as straightforward a question as it might sound. So essentially, I'm managing director of a leadership development company called Strategic Leadership. We work globally. We have offices in the UK, in Germany, and in Iceland. And we work with big multinational companies developing strategic leadership development programs. We try and focus on two key things. One is strategy execution, how good leaders are in terms of their strategic acumen, their ability to execute a strategy, but also consciousness, which is how self-aware are leaders about themselves and their impact. And that's going to be a theme during our conversation, I'm sure, today.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
My background is originally as a psychologist. So for 25 years now, I've been responsible for designing these training programs for customers. So my main job is to design a program or a development journey that's going to get people to change their behaviors. And actually, I think there's always an ongoing argument about, like, can you actually teach leadership? Like, is that something, are these skills actually something that can be taught? And so that's really where I hope my background in psychology comes in, is to try and design programs that do hook people and engage people and encourage them to try doing something a bit differently.
Great. You just said something that is really interesting in there for our listeners. You said there's always this question about, can leadership be taught?
Sure.
And we're going to dive into that. But before then, you're also an author. You've written some books.
Yeah, indeed. I have. Well, it's one book in particular is the one that I'm probably best known for. It's called Corporate Energy, and the subtitle is How to Engage and Inspire Audiences. And it was actually a bit of a private book, because I'm responsible for the trainer quality in our organization. We've got a team of 70 or 80 freelance trainers, and of course, like, the quality of their delivery to bring my material to life is really important. And after having done that for a number of years, I thought, these skills, the ability of a good facilitator to draw out conversations from an audience, to speak in an engaging way, to tell stories that get people to listen in. There isn't really a book that really is like the handbook for all of that. And so I wrote this book, and it really did. It kind of made an impact, or at least in our community, it's made an impact. So if anyone's interested in that subject of presenting, speaking, facilitating, running training sessions and things, I mean, it's for me like the old.
So today we really want to talk about this leadership. What is leadership in itself, and at what level do you have to get to in an organization that you will be termed as a leader?
Okay, I think even here we can start with the conversation around semantics. Yes. And language, because I do think we use the word leadership and leader in slightly different ways. So if we say, like, who are the leaders of the country, or who's the leader of your organization, we're asking a question about seniority, aren't we? We're asking about who's the most senior person in the country, who's the most senior person in the organization. So inevitably then, when you start discussing leadership, we tend to think we're talking about people in positions of power. But actually, that isn't really anywhere in the dialogue about what is leadership. So I think we have to somehow separate the two uses of the word, which is like the leader, meaning the person with kind of authority and power, from leadership, which is the skill and the art, I guess, of mobilizing and motivating people. And those two things are not the same. So to what level? I mean, arguably, if you go with a pure definition of leadership, absolutely everyone can be a leader. It's nothing to do with seniority at all. In fact, in many ways, the more senior you are, typically the less we see good leadership, because you have the power to make people do things, which isn't really good leadership. So generally, the more senior you are, the more people get a bit lazy and just tell people what to do. And then you're the boss. Of course they're going to do it, right? So that actually, the best leadership behaviors tend to come from things like matrixed organizations or project managers who don't have authority, so they don't have those levers to pull, which is like, you have to or you must, or I'm going to do your performance review, so you're going to have to do what I ask. And those people generally are forced to use better leadership behavior.
So from what you've explained, leadership can happen at any level. So, but leaders are used in the seniority level in an organization, isn't it?
Yeah, so I think we use the term leaders to describe people who are senior, which is not necessarily the same as people who show great leadership.
Yeah.
Right? So you can have senior people who aren't good leaders, of course. You can have people who are very junior in an organization, maybe with not even with people management responsibility, frontline, and they show great leadership. You know, they take initiative, they see an opportunity, they fix something that's not in their area of responsibility. All of these things that might be considered great leadership, but they're not they're like most junior person in the company. They're still showing the behavior.
So what would you consider as great leadership?
Right. And, you know, there's catalogues of books on this topic, right? There's entire libraries dedicated to trying to capture the essence of great leadership in some ways. And I'd like to just take it to the simplest possible levels, because I think that way it's easier to understand without getting stuck in business school theory, right?
Yeah.
If you boil it down, what is a leader? What does a leader need in order to say I'm a leader? My personal belief is, if you're a leader, it's like, well, who's following you then? Right, so for me, what defines leadership is not leadership but followership. It's that you've got people willing to follow you or follow your ideas or go along with you. So to me, leadership is defined by followership. So therefore, if someone says I'm a leader, you say, great, well, who's following you? How and when do people follow you? And if that happens, then I'm seeing leadership. To your point, is there a light side and a dark side to that? Because when we say good leadership, you could argue effective leadership is when lots of people follow you. But do you use that followership for good? I guess depends on where you stand and what your intentions are. So, of course, throughout history, we've seen plenty of people who have used their power of leadership, their power to gain followership, to encourage things which are, you know, less desirable. Be that talking about medical advice that is maybe not scientifically sound, or whether that's encouraging people to go to war or whatever it might be. So you can still argue there's strong leadership there, but the intent behind it and the impact of it was not good, in inverted commas. Right?
Which then brings me to this next question, and you probably addressed it, but I just want to mention it anyways, because we've seen a definition. It's almost like there is a culturally acceptable definition for a good leader, or somebody exhibiting great leadership skills. Meanwhile, a lot of the successful organizations in the world, like the Apples of this world, the Elon Musk and the Steve Jobs and even the Bill Gates and all of these guys, you know, there's nothing that we've seen in them. In fact, when you listen to a lot of people that work with them, they said they were really hard work to work with, and they're not people's person, and people still follow them, and they made a great organization out of what they were doing. So is leadership overrated if these people are able to achieve this success by being who they were? And some of these guys, when I read their biography, I didn't see any leadership skills training, or one time they said I went to this seminar, or I had this motivational speaker and all of this stuff. So why then do organizations have to do all of this leadership training and all of this stuff when some people didn't need it at all and they make great company?
Okay, so I'm going to want to separate that into two parts. Right? The first part for me is morality, like ethics, integrity, whatever words you want to use to talk about that. And the second part is then sustainability. So if we go with the first one, so Steve Jobs famously apparently was not a nice person to work for, right? Was he a great leader? I think he had a vision, and potentially the people who were in the aura of that vision were so inspired to go on that journey, and that might be enough to create the followership. And you say, wow, this guy inspired whole organizations, maybe even whole industries, to do something differently, think differently, right? Literally. But is it then okay to say, oh, well, leadership's overrated because he was a complete unlikable person was really nasty. But well, I still think then you've got a question of morality. Okay, so I can be nasty to you because I'm inspirational. That means it's okay. Or, you still follow me, so why not? I don't know. To me, that's almost like abusive in a way. You're going to keep following me, and I'm going to keep treating you like that. It's not okay. I think, we still have a moral or integrity responsibility to treating people well. And the answer to your question, great leaders, of course, treat people well. That is an important part of being a great leader. But is it? Can you have it without? Probably, because you can still have people following you. But then we hit the second point, sustainability. And I don't really have the evidence to back this up, but my argument would be a lot of people can get stuff done by just being really aggressive or loud or forceful. And you know what? If someone shouts at me or threatens me and I feel I probably am going to do it. And the risk there is, it looks like a very effective strategy to the person doing it, because they're like, hey, when I shouted at these people, they got off their asses and did the work. I'm like, brilliant, I'm going to do that again. And of course, this is a reinforcing cycle, I say. So this is really effective. But the truth is, it's not a sustainable strategy, because people won't want to be around you. Or they might be around you for a time, and I don't have the evidence to know whether the people at Twitter, now X, or the people in Apple, whether they stuck around to be treated that way. My guess would be, if people feel they're not being treated well, in the end they'll leave. And therefore you can say, well, this person's a great leader, and for sure they might be in terms of their visionary. But if they have a churn of people behind them, if they don't take people with them on the journey, I don't really feel they have earned the badge of great leadership. They can have other things like thought leader or visionary, and those badges they can have. But
like
for me,
innovators, we could give them innovators.
Give them another term. But if you're going to say to me, is that person a great leader? I'm looking for something that's like the whole package, really. And so I don't think leadership is overrated. I just think you can section it into different aspects of leadership, and maybe that's where you kind of go, well, that person has that, but not the rest.
Because I was listening to, the guy that owns Alibaba?
Yes,
and he was talking about when he set up the company and they were getting bigger. And he thought to himself, I'm going to go to the Wall Street or Silicon Valley. I'm going to bring these seasoned leaders to come run the company. And then he said he brought them in and then realized they can't do anything. And so he got rid of them. Okay. And he did it himself. Yeah. So that's just by the way. The other thing which you really did mention is some leaders are very aggressive, and they see that they get things done because of that aggression, and then they continue doing it. But when you look at a whole lot of organizations, which then bring us to personality trait, a whole lot of organizations make you do the psychometric test.
Sure.
When you start getting to certain levels, and we find out that a lot of their leaders, they clearly have the red. Isn't the industry itself seeing the fact that these are the people that make great leaders, rather than when you have the gentle, the human personality trait, you don't see too many of them at that senior level?
For sure. So again, here's a case where I suppose we're blending together the idea of leadership and power, or leadership and authority, right? Or leadership and aggression. Force, let's say, if we're going to talk about red, forceful people. So these people can deliver results, and quite honestly, most organizations, at least in a capitalist society, delivery of results is going to come like top of people's lists. So you say, well, this person is a great leader because look at the results they've driven. And at one level, if that's your metric, great. I don't know that that's a metric of great leadership. For me, I would then say, what's the culture of that company like? What does it feel like to the people who work there? What do this person's direct reports say? That would tell me whether they're a good leader. Now, are they a good captain of industry? Are they good for shareholders? Have they led the company? And I say lead the company in the sense of being the person at the front of the organization effectively? Yes, maybe. But again, let's separate that word being a leader from leadership. Right? Because any of those things that you use, like those traditionally red type things, they are necessary from time to time without doubt. Does that make great good leadership? I'm not sure. On those psychometric charts, the one scale is task versus people. Are you more interested in task? Are you more interested in people? The other scale is introversion and extroversion, right? And red people are task focused and extroverted. So task focused and very sort of outward, forceful in how they do things. But we have seen more and more a rise on introverted leaders now. And historically, and you mentioned Alibaba, which I think is wonderful, because historically all of our leadership role models in industry have come from the US typically.
Absolutely.
Right? And the US does very good, bombastic, big, extroverted leadership. And consequently, I think we get in our head that's what a good leader is. Right? But actually, a lot of people don't necessarily want someone who's quite egotistical and wants to be the front of house person, because great leaders are remarkably sensitive to the needs of the people, to the culture, to the impact they're having on others. And so actually we have seen a rise in the kind of the putting value on an introverted leader, a quieter leadership style. And Microsoft have a really good example of that, because they went from Steve Ballmer as this, who was a very big character, right, famous for being, I would guess, a red type personality, to the CEO who was much quieter, much more introverted, and has led Microsoft to a position of much greater strength, really by listening to people. So I think we're tying into an ego conversation here, right? And I think that's probably at the heart of where the most senior leaders go wrong.
Absolutely. And you've put a lot of terms together in your conversation. You talk about culture, the general wider culture, which is something else entirely. And looking at leadership and the people that are brought into the organization, from what you explained, it seems to me that the culture that maybe the shareholders or the board have embedded then dictates the person they bring in to drive that culture forward.
Yes, in as much as they may not be that interested in the culture. They're mostly interested in
the money.
Is it delivering results? And if it's delivering results, there's probably not much to complain about. And it just comes back to the sustainability question. A culture that burns people out, that doesn't value the employees, that's not a nice place to work, toxic workplace. At the end of the day, in the end, it will end up having consequences on the performance of the organization, just through the attrition of people but that could take some time. And the shareholders might be sitting and seeing a spike in profits and KPIs and think, well, this person's doing a great job. But if people don't enjoy working for an organization, at the end, for me, the end is in sight. Like there's no way out of that. So I would love to hear that investors and shareholders take a strong interest in the culture of a company. I mean, psychologists and business writers have been arguing that the highest performing companies have the strongest cultures, but I still think at the end of the day that's somehow we have a doubt in our mind that that's really true.
Yeah, because when you look at X, for example, from what we can see being the rhetorics we see on Twitter or on X these days, no one can tell me that the culture in there is any better than what we're seeing on social media. Or you look at companies like some of the tech companies, not to mention their names, and the employees can't even guarantee that they're going to be there next year, because the way they downsize and just let everybody go and then recruit new people altogether. So does it then not matter from the successes we've seen in these organizations what culture is really like? Because they might just say, I'm paying you, that's a culture I care about. I'm paying you, you can pay your mortgage, because they pay really well, those companies.
Sure.
So they I think they believe the money go far, and that says money makes the work go round, innit?
So I want to be realistic. I come at things from a humanist point of view. I'm a psychologist by training, so of course I'm going to argue the people perspective here. But the only way businesses survive is to be highly profitable and highly commercial. And so whether these two things are mutually exclusive or whether they can live together, I think most of the research does seem to show that happy places to work are profitable places to work, in the same way as more diverse places to work tend to perform better. Like all of these, the evidence is there. But if you said to me, look, here's a company, it's a terrible place to work, right? The leaders, in the sense of the most senior people, push and aggressive and forceful, but they pay well and they deliver amazing results. So is that a good company? Then it's just, for me, a morality question. Are you okay being that person? Are you okay treating people like that? Every one of those employees is someone with a home life, a family, coming into work, working, generally sacrificing their health, their well-being, their families, to do that job day in, day out, to drive those numbers. I simply put, I'm not okay with the only metric of output being, well, we've made money and we've paid them well. For me, it's not sufficient, right? But you actually reminded me of a story. Quite some time ago now, I did an awful lot of work around the Middle East in petrochemical industry. And sometimes you get hit by a cross-cultural difference that I was not aware of. And I work internationally my entire career, so I feel like I'm really familiar with different ways of thinking. And I had this one group, and I said to them, after the break, we're going to talk about motivation and how to motivate people. And they came back, and I'd seen them in the break chatting away, like having a huddle, which made me a bit suspicious what's going to happen. After the break, they came back and they said, thank you, we don't want to do this section. They said, we don't need to motivate people. I was like, what do you mean you don't need to motivate people? They said, oh, listen, let me tell you. Our company is the best paying company in the Middle East. We pay the top salaries, and we get to select the very best engineers from the entire world. We pick the best people and we pay them the highest salary. So we don't want to pick that person and then have to motivate them. Like, what are we doing? Like, why? We're paying you a lot of money, we're picking the best people, and you want me to motivate you as well? And I have to say, in that moment, in that being caught on the spot, I didn't really have a good answer as to why they should motivate someone, because you're sort of right. If you pick someone who is very good at their job and you're paying them really well,
and they enjoy doing the work,
and they enjoy doing the work, do I have to, as a leader, also be responsible to now make sure that you enjoy your work? Is that my job? So I kind of paused and I got a bit stuck trying to find my way out of it. So I sort of do hear that secondary thought about, like, is it okay? But I can't get past the fact that I don't think it's okay for a leader to not care about how people feel. And I don't think it's okay for a leader to not know the character of the people they're leading and what they're interested in and what they want to get from their role. Otherwise, we're living in a world of AI and automation. Otherwise, we may as well just be thinking of people as robots. I mean, what the heck? There's no humanity in that process at all.
Do people show